9 o'clock, time for our special call session. Mike, will you call the roll, please?
Collier Wise.
Here.
Helwig.
Here.
Holland.
Here.
Humphrey.
Here.
Price.
Here.
Sorensen.
Here.
Ward. Here. Wilson.
Here.
Mayor Powell.
Here. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. Adoption of the agenda. Mike or John, do you know of any change or additions? Okay. Are there any visitors to be heard in the audience on any topic that's not on the agenda?
Do we need to adopt the agenda?
Oh, I'm sorry. We have to roll call the adoption of the agenda. Thank you, Mike. Go.
Need a motion.
We need a motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Motion is second to adopt the agenda as printed, and roll call vote, please, Mike.
Collier Wise.
Aye.
Helwig.
Aye.
Holland.
Aye.
Humphrey.
Aye.
Price.
Aye.
Sorensen.
Aye.
Ward.
Aye.
Wilson.
Aye.
Mayor Powell.
Here. Aye. Now, are there any visitors in the audience to be heard on any topic that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, we have a public hearing this morning for the second reading of Ordinance 1413, implementation of certain emergency measures to slow the community spread of COVID-19. And John, if you would present that, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Not a lot has changed since the last time we presented this ordinance, but I do want to kind of touch on a couple of changes that we had, a couple of clarifications since the last draft. I believe the draft in your packet includes either language that is underlined, which is be addition, or things that are struck through, which are items to remove. Just two changes I'd address. One is we had referenced in the initial draft massage parlors. A couple changes related to that. We're changing that to massage facilities. We'd also learned that oftentimes they will have a contract for medical rehabilitation. In some cases, it's through our local Veterans Administration. So in item number 2, it does allow that services could be provided that are prescribed, required, or recommended by licensed medical providers. And then in number 5C, where it talks about healthcare facilities, we reference that facilities that are providing medical therapy or rehabilitation services as prescribed, required, or recommended by a licensed medical provider. So that is one change that I would note there, probably a little bit more substantial change. And the other item is the fine portion of it. At the very end of this ordinance, it does talk about, in number 7, the language before just referenced our general municipal code, and that the fine would be related to that. The language that's included would provide you, the City Council, the opportunity to set the fine for that within the parameters set by state statutes in accordance with our municipal code, which would be a fine no greater than $500. If you do make that change, the next item on your agenda is where you'll address that item a little bit more in terms of actually setting the fine for a violation of this ordinance. So otherwise, all the language in the ordinance has stayed the same with those couple notes. I would note that today our legislature is meeting what was veto day. In one of the bills that they have, I believe it's currently labeled number 936, is going to be addressing language very similar to this to reinforce the city's ability to have adopt an ordinance like this. Be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, there are no substantial changes since the last reading.
This is a public hearing, so anyone in the audience that wishes may ask a question or issue at this time. Anyone in the audience have any comments or questions about the item under discussion? Seeing none, we'll turn it to the council for deliberation. Where? Yeah. Tom, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm glad to see all my colleagues in one way or another. This is serious stuff. As I mentioned earlier, this is war. We have to take drastic steps, and things will get better. Time is our, I hope, on our side in this. I think we've made some adjustments that are acceptable. One of the big questions about the massage facilities, and I'm familiar with this because I have a daughter who has been through all of the many hours of training, and it's just shy of being a chiropractor in some cases. So these are licensed people. Nevertheless, chiropractors, I believe, remain open. So my question might be, do massage facilities in connection with or inside a chiropractor's office, can they stay open, do you think, John or Jim?
I would say as long as they are providing, the language is providing, I had it here, treatment, basically, excuse me, facilities unless providing prescribed, required, or recommended services as directed by a licensed medical provider.
So license makes a big difference. Okay, and that may have to do with also a prescription by someone.
Right.
I think was one of Catherine's ideas.
Yeah. If it's
Good
a medical doctor, could be a physical therapist. A licensed medical provider is the language that we utilize to cover the different, if I may, gamut of providers of medical needs.
Yeah. Okay. We really do need to put this into place. Again, it's not. I like the provisions that we can adjust it periodically. That's the way it's written. I think we should also formally, as a city council, request that the governor appoint or reserve or whatever the local 730th Area Support Medical Company of the South Dakota National Guard right here in Vermillion. Those people would love to show that they are indeed part of the community. What it takes is an order from the governor. They could set up a 40-bed hospital somewhere if they had to. So I think that we ought to notify them, and I think we ought to continue to be real human about shut-offs and things like that, but keep the bills handy. Thank you for all your work on this, John, and the rest of the staff, James, and I move approval of this proposed emergency ordinance with the amendments.
Thank you, Tom. We have a motion to approve as amended. We have a second. Is there further discussion? Is there further discussion? I think we have a well-documented deal here for our community, and hopefully it will match up with what the city is going to do also. Without further discussion, Mike, will you call the roll, please?
Collier-Wise,
Aye.
Helwig,
Aye.
Holland, Humphrey,
Aye.
Price,
Aye.
Sorensen,
Aye.
Ward, Wilson,
Aye.
Mayor Powell.
Aye. The measure passes. Thank you all for participation and help in this great process that we need to follow for the next few months. We have a second item, part 5. And John, do you want to bring forward second reading of 1413? Oh, I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. Let me get to the right one. Yeah, I got two pieces of paper laying here. Excuse me just a second. Item B, resolution adopting a fine for a violation of ordinance 1413. And John, please.
Thank you. With your second reading of ordinance 1413, you did insert language in there. I'll start just the first portion of number 7 in ordinance 1413 says, any violation of this ordinance is subject to a fine set by resolution in compliance with the general provisions section of our city code. I'll just shorten it from there. So this is an opportunity for the city council to set what you feel is the appropriate fine for a violation of ordinance 1413. In visiting with the city attorney, I think he felt a little bit more comfortable, and I think this is a way that we can establish this that fits the needs of our community. That is you setting a fine rather than, if you will, Jim kind of having to guess what it is or a court setting what that fine is. The maximum that you could do is $500 per our city code. What the item before you recommends is the most frequent code violation charge that we have is $56.50. You add the court cost of $62.50 onto that, and the total bill, if you will, is $119. I think the first part of this is education, and certainly it's not that, we are going to be looking to issue violations for this, but that if we do get that situation, we do have to issue tickets, that we have a fine established for that. So the resolution before you does include the amount of $56.50 as a violation cost, and then the court cost obviously is set by the state at $62.50 to reach that total of $119. You do have latitude to set it what you feel is the best. We just chose the amount which was the most common number in our violation section. So I'd be happy to answer questions, or we can work on additional numbers from there.
Thank you, John. Audience, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to comment on this item? Seeing none, turn it to council. I'm sorry. Forward.
I wasn't here at the meeting. My name is Josh. I'm with the Dakota Borough Council. I just wanted to see how often would the fine be applied? So if a business was found in violation, would it be each day, or is it a weekly fine, or how does that sit?
John, do you wish to address that, please?
Each day, and the language that was adopted in both first reading this one, each day is considered a separate violation.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you. Further from the audience? Turn to council. Question?
John, is this a fixed fine, or is it up to?
So it would be a fixed fine of $56.50 that each day would be assessed for that.
Essentially not negotiable. I suspect that's sufficient enough.
We did try to contact the other cities that we know that either in the process of adopting an ordinance like this or had adopted it, and they basically, one used a Class 2 misdemeanor, otherwise they used the same language that was in your first reading, and so it leaves it kind of in an unclear category. Yes, it's accessible to a fine, but it puts individuals like Jim in the boat of what am I going to advocate for. I think this sends a more clear message as to what it is. So I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, it might be negotiable by a court if they wanted to?
They could suspend it. I don't think we could, if it's said by the city council, I don't believe that they can part of the fine unless it's by agreement of the parties. But the total fine could be suspended on conditions if the court felt that the circumstances were sufficient to warrant that kind of treatment.
Thank you.
Further? Steve?
You should not sit down. If a business or other entity that's under this ordinance violates the ordinance and is fined, what is the public, how is the public notified of that? And how quickly?
So generally speaking, we don't list violators of city ordinances like that. So my guess is the best time that they would become more of a public item would be when it goes through the court system, and it would say City of Vermillion versus Business X in the court process. So we have historically not, with code violations, reported that in any way, either published it or put it on our website, anything like that.
And if we wanted just these fines published publicly, then I suppose we would need to change the ordinance, which we just passed.
I don't know that we would. I might defer that one to him. He needs some exercise. I'll
Right,
defer that
right.
one to Mr.
All the convictions and fines that are undertaken in this kind of thing, just like any others, would be published in the newspaper every week. Sometimes 2 or 3 weeks worth of court proceedings are published all at once, but they would make it into the plain talk, and they're all public record for anybody who would want to call up there or go up there and try to examine the records. The only thing is, I think that the courthouse is now pretty much off limits to the public unless they have a compelling reason to be there, and there's a protocol you have to go through to get to a particular office. So I think you'd be relying primarily on what the Plain Talk puts in the paper, and they're pretty religious about it.
And you're saying that these fines would be published?
Yes.
Okay.
By the newspaper, not
By
by
the-
any,
right.
not by any government entity doing
Right.
anything officially that way.
And I guess I'm just asking to ask, and I guess I'm more interested in, I'm less interested in people being fined a lot of money for violations than I am deterrent through public, the people know, so that, I guess shame is what I'm looking for, more than monetary
The A.
fine. What's that?
The A.
Right. So, thank you, Jim.
Further?
Well, Jim, while you're up, thank you. And since you raised the point, and I'm familiar with this as a former, very short-time deputy city attorney, where we used to have separate court on city ordinances, is the courthouse hearing any of those city cases, municipal cases at all, right now?
Pardon me?
Is
Say
the
again?
court holding municipal ordinances?
Yes, a lot of things have been continued by request of the court pursuant to the COVID-19 pandemic that we're dealing with. So we've had magistrate court regularly, we've had circuit court regularly, but the court has instructed attorneys and parties to continue their cases until in May, if at all possible. So about the only thing that's happening in court at the present time are emergency type things like protection orders and stuff like that. So we're on hold for a lot of the more mundane things that we have every day.
Thank you, Jim.
Other comments? Mike, where are we as far as, oh, I'm sorry.
I also agree that the fees or the fine shouldn't be exorbitant, I guess, but at the same time, a bar that decides to stay open at night is going to make more than that. So I just don't know if the fee should be set higher, the fine should be set higher to deter the bars from doing that. Because, and I represent a bar as well, but we are doing everything we can to maintain what you guys are asking. But I just don't know if everybody will. So I guess it would just be a thought to have if $56 is enough to deter that business from staying open. So,
There's another $60.
yeah. And I know from a profit standpoint, from a business, that's like 10 customers. And so that wouldn't be that difficult for a bar. I mean, and I think the city is doing enough, when you drive around at night to see that people are trying to stay out of them. But I just don't know if everybody feels the same way. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rich?
John, I guess I ask you, I'm a little bit confused. Would this fine be for instance, the brick house as opposed to the people violating it, being too close together?
So it would be for the business, because
would be
the
the
business would be in violation of the ordinance. And so they would be the one that would receive the citation, I believe would be the correct term.
Okay.
Not the individuals in the bar.
I do not believe the individual, because this is written for a business type scenario, so the individual would not, they would not be charged with violation the way it's written, correct?
That's a shame. Thank you.
That it? Other comments, questions? Mike, do we have a motion?
I'll second.
Motion and a second to adopt resolution adopting a fine for a violation of ordinance 1413.
Could I ask a question?
Question?
John or Mike, if you want, I don't know, but if the council wishes to, let's say that we have some bad actors out there, the council wishes to change this fine, are we allowed to do so at any meeting? Do we, how much notice, how many meetings do we need to have to change the fine?
You would be able to change it with just one meeting, and since it's labeled as an emergency resolution, I'll clarify with the city attorney, but I believe they could change it with any meeting and become effective after that.
Very good, thank you.
Jack, can I ask a question?
Oh, certainly, Kels, go ahead.
If someone was in violation of this, would that also be something that we might look at when we're doing renewals of licenses for liquor license, malt beverage, et cetera?
John, please.
I'm taking that chair next time. We can certainly include that with the list of violations that are presented to you in June or December, depending on the type of language, the type of license they have and when its respective renewal is.
Thank you, John. Kelsey, is that satisfactory?
Yeah, I guess I would just comment, for license holders that are watching this, keep that in mind, that it's not just the fine. There's also, obviously, the public shaming part of it. Although, I believe that there was some behavior between the time that we passed the first reading and today that would say that perhaps that public shame hasn't really settled on some people yet. But this could also mean the future of your ability to continue business if you decide to flout this ordinance.
Thank you. I think that could be included in the police chief's report that he gives us. Okay, Mike, roll call, vote, please.
Collier-Wise,
Aye.
Helwig,
Aye.
Holland, Humphrey,
Aye.
Price,
Aye.
Sorensen,
Aye.
Ward, Wilson, Mayor Powell.
Aye, it passes unanimously 9-0. Thank you. Now, motion and second to adjourn. All in favor? Whoops. Roll call vote, please.
Collier-Wise,
Aye.
Helwig,
Aye.
Holland, Humphrey,
Aye.
Price,
Aye.
Sorensen,
Aye.
Ward, Wilson, Mayor Powell.
Aye. We stand adjourned. Thank you all.